Does anybody in here know your blood type? You know your sister? Oh. Nobody knows really your blood type?
I think I'm like AB something. You
Could be.
have the same blood type.
Yeah, so you may know, or you could find out. Next time you go to like a doctor for your annual visit, you can probably ask them. It's in your file, I would guess. If you ever donate blood, you guys can't donate blood yet. You have to be 18 usually. But my wife works at the New Hartford Library, and every 6 weeks or 8 weeks they have like a blood drive. The Red Cross comes in and you can donate blood. So I donate blood every time they're there. I'm type B blood. So I'm sure you've heard of blood types, right? What are the possible blood types a person can be? Brandon? A, B, AB, and O. And then each one can have positive or negative with it. So let's talk a little bit about what that actually means. So the blood types are named from a protein that's on the outside of our red blood cells. Okay? These proteins are called antigens. Okay? And antigens are a little sort of marker on a cell. You could think that they sort of identify that cell. It's kind of like a little flag advertising what type of cell it is, what type of organism it comes from. And the purpose of some of these antigens, it's important that our immune system knows which cells belong to our body and which cells do not belong to our body, which are foreign cells. Because what does our immune system do to foreign cells? To cells that are not ours? Yeah? It attacks them. So if you get a bacteria into your body, your immune system recognizes, hey, this isn't one of our cells, and it attacks them. So it's important your immune system doesn't attack your own cells. And one of the ways it knows which cells belong in your body is by these antigens, these little proteins that are on the outside of our cells. On our red blood cells, there's two main types of proteins that determine blood type. They're called antigen A and antigen B. Now here in these diagrams, they're shown as like little circles or spikes. That's not what they really look like. This is just to help you visualize it. But on your red blood cells, you may have A antigens, you may have B antigens, you may have both, or you might not have either. And which of those antigens are on your blood cells is what determines your blood type. If a person has A antigens on their red blood cells, what do you think their blood type is? Type A blood. If they have the type B antigens, they're type B. Some people have both A's and B's on their red blood cells. They're type AB blood. And then there are some people that don't have either one on their red blood cells. Those are the type O people. Brandon? No. We'll talk about that. I'm going to show you a graph. So also though, so we have on our red blood cells these antigens. But also within the plasma of our blood, we have another protein floating around called antibodies. What do antibodies do? You know? Yeah? Yeah, they fight off foreign cells. But if you have let's say you have A antigens on your red blood cells, and then if you mix that with antibodies against A, then those antibodies will fight against the blood cells and destroy them. Would that be a good thing for our health? No. So, antigens mixing with like antibodies could result in the destruction of the red blood cells. So a person with type A blood, like we said, they have A antigens on their red blood cells. Do you think they have antibodies against A in their plasma? No. What do you think they have? They do have antibodies against B, and that's okay. Because these antibodies don't match these antigens, they're not going to attack those cells. So that's fine. Person with type B blood has what type of antigens? B. Do you think they have antibodies against B? No, but they do have antibodies against A. Let me finish this slide, then I'll ask you a question. Now, how about a person with type AB blood? What type of antigens do they have?
AB.
They have both A's and they have B's. So do you think they have antibodies against A? Against B? No, they don't have either one. Because if they had either one, it would attack their own blood cells and destroy them. Could lead to sickness, even death. It just means none. Person with type O blood, which antigens do they have? They have none. So which antibodies do you think they have in their plasma? They have both. And that's okay. Because they have no antigens, these antibodies won't attack those cells. So why do we talk about, when does blood type become important? When do we have to be concerned about our blood type? Yeah? Yeah. So sometimes a person has an injury, some disease sometimes. They may need what we call blood transfusion. The blood transfusion, basically they take blood and put it back into your body. It could come from a blood donor. Like when I go to the Red Cross and donate blood, they take my blood, separate it into the parts, store it, and then they can give it to somebody that needs it. Okay. So when you get a blood transfusion, depending on the reason, often it's just the red blood cells themselves, not the plasma, not the clotting, not the platelets. Okay. But usually they're just giving red blood cells. So if a person is getting a blood transfusion, it's important that the red blood cells they're getting match their type or are compatible with their blood type. Because if they're not, we have that situation we we're just talking about. These antibodies mixing from your plasma would attack those red blood cells, and that would be bad. So a person with type O blood, what's on their red blood cells? Neither. So who can get that type O blood? Anybody. Type O is called the universal donor. Anybody can get type O blood because it doesn't have those antigens. So if I have type B blood, which I do, my anti-A antibodies are not going to attack the O blood cell because there's no antigens for them to recognize. Anybody can receive type O blood. In fact, if a person is in, like, say, a car accident, and they need an immediate blood transfusion when they get to the emergency room, if they haven't had time to type their blood, they will just start by giving them type O blood, because anybody can receive it. After they find their blood type, they probably will switch to the appropriate type, B or AB or whatever. But type O blood is what they can use, because anybody can get type O blood. Type AB blood, so type AB blood, they have A and B antigens. Which antibodies are in their plasma? None, neither. So who can they get blood from? Anybody. They don't have those anti-A or anti-B antibodies. They can get blood from anybody. They're called the universal recipient. They can receive blood. So if we look at this table and we try to understand blood compatibility, person with type A blood has A antigens on their red blood cells, have B antibodies floating around in their plasma. Who can they get red blood cells from? Another type A or A type O person, because a type O person doesn't have antigen. How about a person with type B blood? Who can they receive from? B
Or
or O. Type AB blood. Look at this. Who can they receive blood from? Any of the other types. How about a type O person? They can only get it from another type O person because they have antibodies against A and B. So which is the most common and least common? Anyone know? John?
Isn't it like O negative?
Is what?
Negative what?
But is that?
No, usually the most common.
Yeah, O blood is the most common, you're right. Depends on sort of what country you're talking about. People from different parts of the world have sort of different proportions of blood types. Okay. So O is, in the United States, O is the most common. A is the next most common. And together, those are like 85% of people are type O or A. Then smaller percentages are B and AB. And here it's a breakdown again of the U.S. Just a little more detail. Because have you ever heard of the positive and negative thing? People say I'm O positive or B negative. That's another part. So when people say positive or negative after their blood type, they're referring to a different antigen, not the AB antigens. They're referring to this thing that's called Rh factor. Some people have this antigen, this Rh antigen on the blood cells. Some people don't have it. It was discovered in these monkeys, these rhesus monkeys. Okay? And so most people do have the Rh factor on their red blood cells. 15% of people do not. Okay, so O positive is the most common blood type. And this is, again, it has to be matched when blood transfusions are given. Also becomes important in pregnant women sometimes. If there's incompatibility between the mother's Rh factor and the fetus, there can be problems that come up, and so they might have to have certain medications to help with that. Any questions about blood types? All right. Well, we got a few minutes, so I'll finish out with a song.